Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the ISM Rochester Lunch and Learn webinar series. We'll be holding this program the second Wednesday of each month, so be sure to look for our emails for future programs. Next week will be our first membership meeting in person, so it'll be on September 15th. We've sent a few messages out on this, but please come to Jeremiah's Tavern. The program begins at 5:30 and the registration will be online. Also, make sure to see the new website for Rochester. It's rochester.ismworld.org. And of course, you can register for all future meetings on that site. Now, on to our program for today. I'm very, very excited to welcome Graham Crawshaw, who is the Services Director for CASME. And he's actually speaking to us from the UK today. So this is going to be a great conversation, and I think it's a fantastic topic. We want to make it interactive, so please use the Q&A tab for any questions or the chat. And now I'm going to turn the program over to Graham.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Kathy. I'm delighted to be here and delighted that the technology is going to work for us. It really has made everything such a small world now that we can just meet and talk like this. So thank you very much for the invitation. So let me share my screen, and I promise you this is not death by PowerPoint. I wouldn't do that to anyone, not when you're on your lunch break. You want to make it sort of nice and easy. So yeah, my name is Graham Crawshaw. I'm the Services Director at CASME, and delighted to be here. So just a bit about me, because I think if you're going to be listening to some of the things I'm going to say, you might as well get to know me. And I know it's a bit strange. I've had a good catch up with Kathy, but I know I'm sort of talking to you, but anyway, you're going to sit and listen. This is who I am. I'm one of these unusual people that I've been in procurement for my entire career. At university, I wanted to get into procurement. I like spending money, and I think that was probably one of the things that started to get my my interest. So yeah, working forward, I spent most of my career in the music industry. I do play a couple of instruments, don't sing particularly well, but in all seriousness, I was employed to do procurement and worked both in London and different parts of Europe for EMI Music. And then there was a point in my career that I was asked to go to be based at Capitol Records in Los Angeles. And I was there 4 years, moved with my wife and young children at the time, and had a real great experience. My reason for getting invited to work in the US was that I'd become a bit of a specialist in terms of packaging, and in Europe had worked with many of the major artists. Anyone that remembers compact discs builds a collection, and you'll remember in the 90s, there was a lot of packaging that really meant that you collected a compact disc album and you look forward to reading the booklet, the package that it was in. And if you're really a fan of the likes of Pink Floyd, then you may even remember the album that had the flashing light on it. Well, I was very much working in procurement, sourcing, making all of that sort of packaging happen. And if you like, acted as the interface between translating requirements from the artists, from marketing, through to the suppliers and operations. When CD started to decline, I was then involved with some streaming contracts, and ultimately then worked for a whole number of other music companies as organizations were revisiting and addressing their procurement. And I did that once I'd returned to London. So I've always been in procurement. I know I'm addressing a group of people from the Institute of Supply Management, but if I may just say my full qualifications are from the Chartered Institute of procurement and supply in the UK, and I've got my fellowship status, which is the highest level of not only the academic side of it, but also the appointment side. So recognize that it's down to me to give back to the procurement profession, and that's what I like doing now. I work for a company called CASME. It's a relatively small company, but we've got some big objectives, some big missions, and I'm just very briefly going to set the context of what CASME is about. We do support procurement, specifically indirect procurement teams, by putting on different roundtables, different events. We produce different documents and insights and do different benchmarking across a whole range of organizations and categories. And just to put it into perspective, on the screen there, you can see the types of companies. We've got about 180 members, pretty much global, and they're all large organizations. And you know, the good thing, certainly with my procurement hat on, is that we don't have any sponsors or suppliers. So everything that we do is coming from procurement. So it's from procurement, shared for procurement. And the reason I wanted to give that context is all that I'm going to share with you today has come from our members. And I think that is so important. So it's got some credibility sat behind it. And this is what procurement is telling us. So it's a great way to build on that information and then, like now, put it all together and share it with you. So what I wanted to take time today to discuss and get your feedback on via the chat or the Q&A is negotiating via video conferencing. Now, you may say, well, wait a minute, we've had to do that. What's the big deal? What's the issue? And, you know, like a lot of what we do in procurement, it's not necessarily rocket science. It's not exactly that sort of way out in terms of complexity that you'd be amazed by what I'm about to say. But I think just in the same way as we've all been through negotiation training, it's bringing those points together and keeping those in mind so that when you're under the pressure of being in a negotiation, you can just remember or have it almost as a checklist to really think, hang on, am I doing this in the best way? Am I adjusting to the fact that now we need to do things via Zoom? We've all become Zoom experts or Teams experts. We've all got used to the cameras, the microphones, the lighting, and it's important that you sort of remember much of this. So what I'm going to share with you is, and I've only got 2 slides, you'll be pleased now. I did promise not death by PowerPoint, but what I'm going to share with you is as a result of us doing a survey across the CASME members. So every single point I'm sharing has come from multiple people, from multiple organizations saying, look, this is what they have done, this is what they have found useful, and that they wanted to share with other procurement professionals. Now, I will be sending Kathy a copy of the slides here, so you can use them yourself as that checklist. So let's specifically look, and I'm not going to talk about negotiation because, well, I'm sure many of you have been on courses and training, and I personally found I did a course many years ago provided by the GAP partnership and thought it was excellent. I think just the act of being trained in negotiation is so important because it's not something that just you can do without the preparation or without the understanding. But what I'm going to cover is specifically when we need to do it via video conferencing. So I've spoken to many people over the last 18 months that have said they've had to do significant negotiations with suppliers that they've never met. And if you're negotiating contracts worth millions of dollars, pounds, whatever currency, with people that you've unable to meet and can only access via a screen and Zoom or Teams, then it's a different mindset that you need. So let me get into the detail now and share with you some of the findings. I'm going to start with technology, and it's so important to get right. So the points on technology, and my apologies if they sound obvious, but I have seen so many examples where things have gone wrong, and that lack of preparation, that lack of testing has just thrown people. And that can be dangerous. If you're negotiating with people on a very expensive contract, then you need to be in full control. So I would say testing out the system was the #1 response that we got from our members. Really doing a trial and a practice to see if the connection is going to work, to see if everything is going to be aligned, set up, and be ready for you. And that goes to the detail. Sometimes I have to use video conferencing systems provided by other organizations. And it may be you're in control of which system is used. Maybe for whatever reason, you're not. Now, we all find also with the different versions, anyone that uses Zoom knows that keeping up with the versions is quite a challenge. There's always something each week being updated. And so you need to know where the buttons are to share the screen, to mute, anything like that. That's a new feature. You want to make sure you're prepared so the technology doesn't throw you at that all-important time. We also know that for many organizations, they've got very strict IT protocols in place. And that can mean that you just hit a firewall. Something that ought to work suddenly doesn't work, or you can't access via the browser or via the app. You have to do it in a certain way. So this is why you've got to test for every single supplier via relationship and negotiation situation. I think it's important to agree up front whether something is being recorded or not. It's now, with Zoom as one example, it's very clear. As soon as you start recording, there's an announcement made that every party must agree to that. That hasn't always been in place. It's something they've definitely improved and tightened up on. But you need to know whether someone has got the opportunity to play back or record in some way the conversation. I think it's important to make sure that the ability to talk and be seen is also in place. You may say it's obvious, but I hear so many situations, and even this week had a situation of connecting with someone and something didn't work. There was feedback on the speakers. It's just that detail that's worth getting right. And I think getting a practice session, getting that technology in place is going to avoid any distraction when it comes to the serious element of negotiation. So that's technology. Let's look at the environment. And again, we've seen so many different situations around here. It's important to get your environment correct and right. So make sure you've got the right lighting. And to be honest, we've all had time to invest in the right levels of lighting and understand how do you get it so that you can fully see the person. As a buyer, you want to be able to see the supplier. You don't want to see some distant shadow because they're sat in the wrong place, or the lighting isn't wrong, or heavily overexposed. They're either a shadow or they're like a ghost. You need to get that right. Now, we've all played around with the virtual backgrounds, but I think it's important to be consistent in your approach, whether you're going to use them or not. And we know that you need the right level of power within your laptop to be able to use them. So again, plan ahead which one you're going to use if you're going to use it. You may just want a corporate logo like the one that I've got. You may need something to disguise your background. Again, get it all prepared. Now, again, we've all had time to make sure we've got the right size monitor in place. And certainly the feedback from our members was, please use the largest size monitor that you possibly can, because you will want to keep an eye on what's going on. And if it's a tiny screen, that's just not going to work very well. We're going to be talking about the need for seeing that right level of body language and exactly what is going on. And then also get yourself a camera that is at eye level. No one wants to see you looking up your nose or just a distorted face image. So it's important to get that level of detail right. So communications, getting set up ready for the negotiation. We were told by a whole number of people that that whole communications side of things is very important. It's a good one to get right. And essentially the best practice is that within your own colleagues, you've got a different mechanism to be able to communicate or speak with them. And so, for example, WhatsApp works quite effectively. So if I want to communicate to my colleague a question, I want to make sure that only that person can read what I'm writing. You don't want the information inadvertently leaked to the supplier. So keeping it completely separate, avoiding any embarrassing, sending a chat to the wrong person is definitely something that people say, get prepared with that. It makes it much easier. One of the points we also had from a number of people is that on some of the video systems, you can actually turn on the closed captioning. So you can actually have a transcript either going live as the people talk, or certainly captured as part of the recording. That can be very useful. Again, agree in advance, is that a feature you're going to use or not? And then I think finally, in terms of communication, these systems have got whiteboards connected with them. Now, we heard from a number of people, good things and bad things about this. There is a danger of overusing them. There's a danger of writing something you don't want actually the supplier to see when you're having the conversation. So you've got to be very mindful which system you're using, how you use it, and then what access everyone has got to what is written down. The last one in terms of the negotiations is preparation. Now, this is probably the first time where I'm going to say, I think the overriding point to make from this whole presentation is when you're planning your negotiations via video conferencing, do not forget all that you have learnt on your negotiation course. Do not forget what you were taught or what you've practiced, or all the things, the techniques, the strategies when you're face to face. I know it sounds really obvious, but the message is that almost because it is different, because you're reliant on the video conferencing technology, that some of the old schools, some of the good things that you've learned get forgotten. And I think this is relevant in terms of this one. Preparation. We all know, those of us that have done extensive negotiations, that quite frankly, negotiation is all about preparation. You can't hastily arrange a meeting. You wouldn't do that in person. The supplier probably travels to you. You plan it, you know when it's happening. So don't be lulled into a sense of, let's just jump on a Zoom call and have that discussion. You've got to be aware of the seriousness of what you're planning and then plan accordingly. Agree the use of cameras. And that also is something you do not. I've been in a situation where I've been on camera, my colleague has been on camera, and the person that I'm negotiating with doesn't. They're audio only. They have got a massive advantage because they can see all of my reactions. So you've got to agree that there's got to be consistency. You're both using the camera. And I'll come on to some of the techniques of really taking advantage of that in the next slide. So in terms of planning, if you were doing a face-to-face agenda meeting, I would hope you would all have a written agenda that was shared in advance of the meeting, in advance of the supplier arriving. This is no different. Just because it's like this, do not think that you can get away without that level of planning. And so CASME members have said, look, you've got to have that agenda. You've got to know what is the purpose of the conversation, what you're trying to achieve, and what you do. And one of the things that was made very clear was if it is an important negotiation, then you need to work out which team. So plan ahead. Who are you going to have representing your organization? And one of the points that was made very clear is the value of a facilitator, someone whose role is to chair, to manage the event, not to actually negotiate themselves, but just to carry on that higher level of planning and management for the event. Again, learning from mistakes. A good number of people said, look, if you're going to share the screen, and just as I've done here, I did a practice with Kathy beforehand. If you're going to share the screen, first of all, make sure you know what you're going to share, and don't share your notes that you wrote about your strategy for the negotiation. Be very mindful that once you've shared it very quickly, then the supplier has got access to that. So be very mindful of what you're sharing and exactly when. Don't fall foul of sharing something that's confidential. Also, if you're sharing a Word document, I don't know about you, but I've made this error before. You've got Word, you've been planning it, you've got it all marked up, but the difference between showing the original version, the simple markup, or the full markup, just be very careful. You don't want to give away anything unnecessarily. You've got to be trading off. So therefore, don't just let that information be to your disadvantage because you've shared a document that's all got markup on it. And then finally, just check your slides can be read. We know you've got to have the right font size. If you're going to do a conversation that involves redlining a contract, then you've got to make sure both parties can read the type and it's not so small that one party is disadvantaged. So that's the summary of all the points that I think in terms of preparation, getting ready for the negotiation. Let's move on to the second slide now. So at the start of the negotiation, and I think the points here are things that you would never do if the supplier was coming to visit you. But the mentality is that because it's on video conferencing, well, it's a different approach. It doesn't matter in the same way. So I was surprised when a good number of our members responded with the statement, don't multitask. If you're negotiating a high value contract, why would you even think of multitasking? Why would you be doing anything other than really focusing on the task in hand? But we all know it's so easy, isn't it? Just to do something else. Now, I know this is different, but how many of you are multitasking at the moment? Hopefully you're having your lunch. That would be perfectly acceptable. But you know what I mean? It can very easily creep into being a distraction. We've said it in terms of the preparation, your internal team. I would expect you to have prepared all the trade-offs that you're going to agree well in advance of the conversation. And that's before you even start to talk. So you've got that master plan, you know what's going to come up. So we've got the supplier, they connect, technology is fine. The message that we also heard very loud and clear is, you know what, you need some social engagement. You need a chat. And if you think about it, if a supplier is coming to your premises, then you would have that social engagement to begin with, even if it was just a question of the distance from walking them from your reception to the meeting room. The chances are you would offer them the use of the restroom, you'd offer coffee, refreshments. Well, I hope you would. I think it's always good practice if you can offer your supplier that, because you never quite know what that water cooler, coffee machine conversation is also going to be. But I think the principle of just putting everyone at ease and just being human about it, having those conversations. We know suppliers do their homework. They record, they know the details about your family, your dog, your everything. And so that needs to be part in a video conferencing as well. Take time out to have those conversations just as you would. Now, next point is agree a timekeeper. It's so easy for time to just drift on and not get done what you're looking to achieve. Very easy. Just have a stopwatch. I've got one here. I know exactly how much time I've got. Have a timekeeper, someone that's really going to know what should be allocated for each section, each part of the negotiation. You may want to use breakout sessions if you've got lawyers with you or others that have some value in going away, having a conversation, and then coming back to the main meeting. I think the message I've heard is don't get too complex. Keep the technology as straightforward, but it was included, so I did want to share that. So as you're starting off, make it very clear, what is the purpose? Why are we all here? What are we looking to achieve from this video conferencing call? We've then got everyone on the same page. So moving on, during the negotiation, it can be very easy to dive into something that's very important as far as you're concerned. And that may well be straight onto price or rates or fees. But have a look, just as you would in a face-to-face meeting, going through what actually is important, not only for you, but also for the supplier. And don't just focus on those. You've got to focus on all aspects of the contract. So in the same way as if you're doing a negotiation, you've already got planned your best alternatives, all the other strategies that you would have in terms of a face-to-face negotiation. Do not forget them. Do not avoid having that plan and that communication so that you can work with your colleagues to make it happen, even though you're looking at a camera. Now, you need to avoid everyone speaking at the same time, which is one reason why that facilitator is quite an important role. They can act as chair to the conversation and actually guide it through what that should look like. This next one was an interesting one because I had some follow-up conversations to really understand the detail. And that is to avoid disturbances unless you want them to be part of the negotiation. And I know from a couple of 2 or 3 organizations that actively plan that based on something happening, a disturbance will take place. Now, it may be spontaneous or it may be planned. And that can be to either reset some tension, just to rethink, regroup within your own team, but different ways of planning an interruption. And some of you may do that in a face-to-face meeting. You may get a colleague that said, look, walk in 1 hour's time. If we're still doing this, it will just break up the conversation. It just changes the dynamics and the atmosphere. And it works well also on a video conference. As you're finishing the negotiation, back to do not forget what you have learnt in all the years of doing negotiation. Make sure that you're collectively summarizing what has been agreed, what is outstanding, and what are the action points. Now, you don't need me to tell you that the objective of a negotiation has to be a win-win for both parties. If it's win-lose, you know the contract is going to fail. It's very, very unusual that you be in a situation that one party feels very pleased with the outcome and the other very disgruntled. You've got to compromise, you've got to negotiate round, and I'm turning this into a negotiation lecture, and it's not. I'm not supposed to be doing that because I'm only looking at the video conferencing. When you've got what you've agreed and what's outstanding, don't just press the end button. Don't just leave the discussion like that. In the same way as you would invite the supplier to leave the room and you'd walk them to the reception, do the same on Zoom. Take a few minutes to say, look, we have formally concluded our meeting. The negotiation is over. But actually, maybe now's the time just to have some conversation, because it is about the relationship. So plan that in. Don't be eager to all hang up and leave, because that also is just really good practice. So finally, some additional notes to share with you. Again, these were points that, to be honest, I didn't quite know where to slot in so far. So I thought they were so valuable that I wanted to include them. This message of trust, I think that is important. We know that the relationships are so important. As a complete aside, it has been very clear in many pieces of research and benchmarking that we've done, relationship management has been the reason why procurement has been so successful during the pandemic. So if it is so important, it needs to be part of what you're doing in terms of the negotiation. Having trust in the process, in the people, in the way that you're doing, it is just so important. Now, also, some of the techniques, I was told a number of times that even in the same way as in a face-to-face meeting, you could effectively use silence and active listening skills, which hopefully you've all perfected. But that works also on the video conferencing. Don't think that just because it's through a camera system that it doesn't work. It does. So listen. Basically, don't talk all the time. Let the supplier talk. And in the same way, that may give you some advantage if they're talking their way into reducing the price or improving the terms. But just be mindful that in a face-to-face situation, you would actively listen. Do so also on the video conferencing system. We're all fed up of Zoom. I think that's very clear. Anyone that spends all their day on Zoom meetings, Zoom fatigue is very real. And I think if you are on a very serious negotiation, you've got to have the breaks. You've got to just agree to pause everything for 15 minutes, half an hour, depends on the time of day, depends whether you've got lunch or whatever, and have that break away from the screen. Because when you come back to it, the dynamics have just all refreshed, and it then makes it so much more effective and easier to concentrate. So always include those breaks. Now, I don't know how many technology issues you've had when you've been using Zoom. We've all had them. Something suddenly fails, the internet connection goes down, and I think it's all part of getting that planned in. So have a plan. What happens if something goes wrong? Agree to abort the negotiation. Agree to work out whether you're going to regroup in a matter of minutes or even the following day. But just avoid a situation that throws you. Because if you've got it planned, if both parties know what to do, then it's much easier. But don't allow a situation that perhaps has started by video conferencing. Don't then just rush to say, oh, let's pick up the phone and conclude that. You can end up sort of potentially missing out or just losing that structure that you've planned and prepared for. I've had a lot of conversations on this this next point, and I think there's a lot of validity here. The suppliers are at a disadvantage. They are in their office. They have very limited view of what they can see. So you should be aware of that. They haven't had the opportunity of walking through your halls, being on your premises, meeting anyone else that often suppliers like to bump into prior to meeting with procurement. They're only connected by the Zoom or other link. And so they can only see, they can't see what you're doing. They can't see what arrangements that you've got in place. And so that's something that you can take advantage of, because yeah, they can't read the room. They can't assess the situation. But be careful, because equally they can read you and assess you. So you've got to make sure the way that you behave, the way you demonstrate body language is consistent with the message. And if you would act body language in a face-to-face meeting, then do the same on the camera. If you deliberately want to show that you are either very pleased or not pleased, then that facial expression can say so much and really help the negotiation. So again, it's all those techniques that you've used on face-to-face, it still applies when you're using the technology. And again, I know I've said that a few times, and you may say, oh, we know that, but I've seen so many examples where, yeah, it's known, but it's not done. You've got to do as you believe is right for your negotiation. And finally, I love this warning one that a number of people pointed out to me, and that was anything that's on any screen can easily be copied. The screen grab, the different tools that you've got just to take the information. So you would never have that in a face-to-face meeting. So you've got to be mindful. I mean, it goes against the comments around the trust, which is an issue, but just be mindful. Anything that's on the screen within a matter of seconds can be copied, and the supplier has got that information. I hope from what I've shared with you that it's got you thinking. That's always our objective at CASME, just to get people thinking. And at CASME, we've got teams where we're very much focused on supporting our members. So I know Carolyn is on the call at the moment. Delighted to have her with us today. But anyone that wants to connect and really understand any more, then please do so. But I promised I wouldn't make this an advert. I want to move now. I'm going to stop the sharing. I want to move now into some questions to know whether you agree or disagree, whether you believe that what I've said makes sense. And any statement like that is always very useful to reaffirm or to confirm some of the points. If you think that you knew it all and it was of no help at all, then I'm very thick-skinned, be happy to take any sort of concerns there. But what I can guarantee you is all that I've shared has come from procurement professionals. This is what they have found of value when negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts via video conferencing technology. So I don't know if we've any questions. Kathy, it's did it all make sense? And I'm always conscious. I know I worked in Los Angeles for 4 years, but I still sometimes say a phrase that my US colleagues thinks hilarious because you would never use it in the US. And I can never think, but we do have different terminologies, different words. So if there's anything that's been a bit too English, then let me know. But Kathy, can I be blunt and ask, from your experience of negotiating, did some of the points that I shared, did that resonate with you?
Yeah, it did. Those
Good.
were very good points, because there are a lot of things that you're not really taking into consideration when you're setting a platform for doing a negotiation. I was actually taken away on this because sometimes you're making presentations as well. And a lot of this information can be valuable for presenting globally. If you're going to be presenting out there to a team that you haven't actually seen, I would think also becomes very valuable. But again, please put any questions. You can use the Q&A or the chat. Oh, we do have a question up here. Okay. That's from Lonnie. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, like the presentation. Yeah, friend for life, Lonnie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If anybody else has anything, please share with us, because that's what we're here for. We want to make this, we wanted it to be you participating in this. So ask your questions, especially, or if you had anything happen to you doing a negotiation that you would like to ask Graham about, that might be a good.
Yeah, or equally the yeah, anything that you've had that works. I mean, I continue to build this list because, and I've actually not seen anyone else publish anything on this. That's why I was excited. And when Kathy, we were talking about what could we do a session on, I think, well, there's loads of books on negotiation, but in terms of, well, actually just the video conferencing elements, there is nothing. So we struck on this very early on, and that's why it was great to get all the input from our. So I was picking everyone's brains, saying, look, come on, what really is going to help you? And it's scary to think that you're negotiating contracts worth millions of pounds and you've never actually met suppliers. And I guess the question is also from me to you is, how long is this going to stay like this for? Are you willing to travel? Is your business going to allow you to travel? Is your business going to want suppliers coming into your premises? And it's fascinating. In the UK at the moment, we're busy removing all the restrictions that we've had. And by law, many of them have gone, but people are still wearing masks. People are still working from home. And there's a nervousness. People don't want to travel. The airports are still very, very quiet. I used to travel all over the world. I'm in no rush to be with a whole load of people on a flight for many hours because, yeah, I've had my 2 vaccines. I'm sure you all have. But it doesn't mean that you avoid you can avoid COVID-19. And with all these Delta, the variations that are coming on as we go into the winter months, it's a bit scary still. This virus hasn't gone away, even though we've gone and got the vaccination. So I don't think people will be traveling or rushing to travel. So I think, and certainly the view within Europe is that we'll be doing negotiations via video conferencing for a very long time. And I think some things can be very efficient, very effective. So if you're doing an RFI and getting suppliers to present to you, to get that consistency, you may want to insist that it's done via video conferencing. How much more efficient is it for you? I don't know. It's a really, really interesting one. I'd welcome any observations, anyone that's sort of thinking, are you looking forward to getting back on the road or apprehensive? It's, yeah, really, I don't think it's clear cut. I think it's very, very strange. And of course, across the world, we are in a different situation. If you look at Australia, they were very much behind the whole sort of concern. They didn't get the vaccinations organized, and now they're on lockdown. So you've got different countries, different parts of the world that very much different approaches. But yeah, I think that the days of a supplier jumping in the car, getting on a flight, spending a whole day, one night, perhaps traveling to do a 1-hour presentation when they could actually do it effectively via Zoom is, I don't know, really interesting. I wish we could have a crystal ball. I wish we could, well, we will look back on this And we'll either say, oh, it's everything back to normal, people are traveling, suppliers are going to meet with procurement, or as Carolyn, you indicate, maybe it is going to be that, yes, that this system is here and it can serve a very effective sort of process. I know it's not negotiation, but my son has just left university. All the interviews he has been doing are all online, very effective. So I think recruitment is definitely via video conferencing because it is so efficient. Procurement and suppliers, I think if it is a very high value contract, well, maybe the supplier would want to come and visit, but maybe you still do a chunk of the negotiation. Those meetings that require different functions to come together to work through the terms and conditions, redline the contracts. Maybe it's a hybrid approach. Don't know. I think we need to wait and see. So I would welcome if anyone has got any comments, observations on that. Well, now's a good time to ask.
Yeah, please. Graham's here, so please, please ask the questions, definitely. Or if you have, as he says, any observations that you'd like to bring to the group, that would be great as well.
I think what will be interesting is to repeat the benchmarking that we did probably in January, February next year to get a review of what the thoughts are in terms of the video conferencing use. So just in the same way as we would track what are the hot topics in procurement, then actually understanding, well, what's really going on. Because you don't want to miss out, do you? You don't want to be in a situation that you're behaving or acting differently to your competitors. I guess the question is a bit of a rhetorical one, but if you do the negotiation via Zoom, are there things that you're missing out? Overall, are you leaving cost on the table? Are you leaving other value on the table? Or are you doing better than your competitors negotiating with the same supplier? I wish I'd got an answer for that, and I don't think any of us have, but it's a thought process that you need to go through to work out what is the most effective way. How am I going to get the best results for my business, given what I'm trying to achieve for the organization? That's why I find it fascinating. But that's why procurement's so much fun, because it constantly changes. We're never doing the same thing. It's always done differently. There's that pressure to do things differently, but that makes it engaging. It means that we need to do it as people rather than that's the aspect that can't be automated. So yeah, definitely a very exciting way forward, whatever it turns out to be.
Graham, a question for you on the body language part.
Yes.
Are you finding, or did they find, I know you spoke a little bit about body language, but are you finding it a little bit more difficult because you are not in person? You're not seeing the person actually sitting at the table. What are they doing under the table type of thing? Their feet, are they stressed? I mean, can you really ask, get all that body language?
No, I think you can. I think you can, Kathy. Now, I've got a very large screen here in my office from a very good computer manufacturer that produces 49-inch screens. And so the image that I've got, and there's only the two of us, but I mean, I can see a lot of detail. I can see more detail than you probably realize in terms of the certificate that you've got on your back wall, the pictures, the books. I can't read the title, but I can see exactly any body language. I would see if you showed signs of distress, those actions where you're touching your hair, where you're sort of responding. So actually, the fact that I'm actually seeing you less than sort of 10 inches away from my eye, you're actually a lot close. We'd never sit this close, Kathy. We would feel very uncomfortable, pandemic or not. So that is why it is so important that you need that large screen to be able to do your job effectively, because of course the supplier has also invested, no doubt, in the technology and can see exactly where your eyes are moving. And we all know the face gives so much away. I mean, I can sit here and I try to not use my hands. I try to keep them under the desk here, but your face gives it away. And if I was to give you some bad news, Kathy, that I was going to be hiking the price up by X%, I would very easily, I would be looking to see exactly how you responded. And of course, we're recording this. So if there's any doubt, I can play this back. So the way you display your body language and the way you watch it has to be just as strong by video conferencing as if it was sort of face to face. So yeah, really, actually, that's quite scary when you start to think about that one. There is no getting away, but make sure you have got advantage by seeing exactly what is going on the other cameras.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I agree with you totally. I totally agree. Oh, well, you know what? I think we only have a few minutes left. I don't see any questions. So at this time, do you have any closing comments or any closing remarks for the group?
I think one word is relevant to all of this, and it is preparation. And I don't think it matters whether it's face-to-face or via video conferencing. Do your preparation. Hopefully some of the points I've shared with you today will get you thinking. Prepare, and when you think you've prepared, spend the same amount of time preparing. That is how you get the results on negotiation. And I think there's no other way to short circuit that. But thank you, Kathy. It's been great being with you today. I really hope that people have found that of interest and value. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. And from the comments, people are saying, thank you, Graham. Great presentation. A lot of good points that came across. And I have to agree, so many good points. And I really appreciate the for you taking time out of your, I know it's night for you. So
Yes.
For you taking time out of your night to join ISM Rochester today, we really, really appreciate it.
Well, it's been my pleasure. So thank you all, and look forward to seeing you at a future event. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I wish everybody a wonderful day, and thank you. Good night, Graham.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.